What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Rundown with Zinga. I'm your host, Zinga. Today, we are going to discuss yet again Cooper and his administration because he just gives so much material. Politically, North Carolina has had nothing but downs this year. So not only did we have to go through the worst of coronavirus, but now we are taking freaking ever to reopen compared to our neighboring states. And to make this crap pie we call 2020 even better, on Monday we will find out if we will go to our next phase of reopening. And as you know, North Carolina doesn't have a normal governor, so for all we know, Roy could regress us back to phase 1. And sadly, at the moment, our leaders are discussing if wearing masks will be a statewide mandatory thing. But listen, let's cut him some slack. Roy has been a great example of what it means to adhere to safety protocols during this trying time.
When you're around people, wear your masks and try to keep 6 feet away from others. Especially if you are a leader, set a good example.
Roy explained earlier this week in a press conference that in order to solidify his decision-making, he will be using science and data. Wait a second, Roy, is this the same science and data that media outlets are suing you about? 15 media outlets are suing Roy Cooper, Mandy Cohen, and Eric Hooks, the Secretary of Public Safety, for not sharing information when public records releases were filed. These media outlets have 9 offenses against the Department of Public Safety, and all but 1 are concerning coronavirus. Many of the requests have to do with how the Cooper administration is handling coronavirus in our prisons. Here's a couple other things that are missing from the public records requests. 1, the state's database of COVID-19 cases. And number 2, copies of reports of prison inspections conducted during the pandemic. Number 3, communication between officials of the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Health and Human Services. And number 4, communication between the Department of Health and Human Services and local health departments. Oof, so many things to say. Where do I even start? First of all, he clearly ain't all that serious about wearing masks. Secondly, he and Mandy keep mentioning all this science that ain't nobody seen but them. Looks like Cooper and his administration want us to blindly follow their mandates, even though they rule us out of secrecy. And they mandate our behavior with the amount of competency as like a gnat. As of May, Mandy Cohen couldn't answer the following questions when asked by the press. First question is, does the state public health laboratory have the capacity to process tests coming from nursing homes? The second question, what interval does the state mean by regular testing of long-term care populations? And let me remind you that on April 9th, Roy sent out an order that had public safety requirements, and in those requirements, there was nothing about testing. The fact of the matter is that neither Roy Cooper nor Mandy Cohen followed federal guidelines when they should have. Governor Santos of Florida and Roy Cooper got the federal guidelines at the same time. DeSantis followed suit, and Roy waited a month before doing the same. There's a flaw in Roy's leadership. It's incompetency, because there's no other excuse for all of the screw-ups. Congressman Greg Murphy said this in a press conference last week. The White House Coronavirus Task Force expressed a grave concern that the Cooper administration had a systemic flaw responding to COVID. When the pressure is on, Roy cannot handle it, and he does exactly what every other person with no leadership skills and no plan of action does. He hides. And for those of you who for some reason need more evidence, check this. All of the virtual press conferences that Roy has been doing has been conducted by a firm called Maestro Conference. And this firm is a Democrat campaign firm. And Roy is using this firm so he can shut up the reporters who have challenging questions for him. And the worst thing about it is he's using state resources to do it. So check this out. Maestro Conference worked for Kamala Harris, they worked for Amy Klobuchar, they worked for John Ossoff, and of course they worked for UN Black Joe Biden. And then there's more. On top of that, Maestro Conference is seen by the federal government as a security risk. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. Listen, he screwed up with Hurricane Matthew, he screwed up with Hurricane Florence, he screwed up with coronavirus, he screwed up with unemployment benefits, and he's trying to cover up all of his screw-ups. But listen, everything that's done in the dark comes out in the light, and just because you're a governor does not mean that principle doesn't apply to you. Listen, we can't keep taking chances with Roy. What else could he possibly screw up? In November, we gotta kick his hind part out of the governor's mansion. I know, obviously, we don't want to physically kick him, but the way to Politically kick him is to vote him out, and he's got an opponent. His name is Dan Forest, and we need to vote Dan Forest in November. And so that's it for the rundown, folks. Don't forget to like and share this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Get the message out there, and let's let Roy know that we're not putting up with this crap anymore. I've been Zinga, you've been amazing, and I'll see you next week.